This is Chris, the Idaho Painter, here on Paint Live TV. Today, I got a video on mastering spray and trim. This is a compilation video. This is going all the way back to 2011 to 2020, putting together my best content of mastering and spraying trim like a pro. It's a longer video, so grab a drink, grab a beer, grab a soda, whatever you got, sit back, relax, and watch this video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you don't do both of them, it doesn't really do anything. It's kind of a weird thing with YouTube, but you got to hit the subscribe button, notification bell. It's free, just a couple clicks, easy to do. Doesn't cost you anything. You'll just get notified every time I come out with a new video. But now we're going to get on with spray and trim. Hopefully, by the time you're done watching these videos, you'll be a master at spray and trim. Yep, it does take a whole lot of practice. You're not going to be able to spray trim like a pro in 1 day, 2 days, or even 3 days, but this is going to get you on that path down the road of spray and trim and creating fine automobile-like finishes. But enough of this. Let's get on with the video. A bunch of tips that sit in front of me, and I'm going to be talking about tips, what tips I use, when I use them, and where I use them. And I like to really simplify this process, like I like to simplify a lot of things in the painting process just to make it more faster and more efficient so you can just make money and you don't have to make a whole lot of decisions. Here's 3 tips in front of me. If I could have only 3 tips, these are the 3 tips I'd have. This is a 310, a fine finish 310. This is a high production 515 tip, and then this is a Titan HEA 619 tip, and I'll talk a little bit about each one of those and where I use them. But I've used probably over the last 5 years almost just exclusively these 3 tips right here in all the interior and exterior painting I've done on interior and exterior repaints. So when in the new construction industry, it would be a little bit different what tips I would have, but this is the repaint industry. And I'll first talk about fine finish tips. And I got a 310 tip right here that I'll talk about. And this is all the tips that you're sitting here in front of me. These are all Titan tips. If you don't understand tip sizing, the numbers, I'll just give a really quick breakdown, but I have another video that explains it in depth. The first number, the 3, you multiply it by 2, and that gives you the fan width at 12 inches from your surface. So this is a 6-inch fan, and the next number, the 10, the 2-digit number, that's your orifice size, tells you, this how much paint is actually coming out of the tip when you're spraying. And every manufacturer has, their own color coding. Now, Titan's tips, purple tips are fine finish tips. So these tips are going to give you a really fine finish, like an automobile finish on certain things that you're painting, like trim, cabinets, in furniture, stuff like that, where it's really critical you don't have any type of eggshelling on your finish, but it just levels out and gives you a buttery smooth finish. If I could only have one fine finish tip, it would be a 310 tip, and that would be, I'm doing repaints, and so to me, I'd be using a tip like this to spray doors. I'd spray gutters with it. I would spray my interior trim pack, anything where I wanted a fine finish. If I'm going to spray cabinets with an airless sprayer, I'm going to use a fine finish tip, a 310. Just about everything I would use a 310. Now, if I had the opportunity to add one more fine finish tip in there, I'd add a 510 tip. When I was doing new construction, most of my new construction was using a 510 because we were spraying a lot of doors in new construction. You got a wider fan and you can move a little bit faster. You can do your doors faster in new construction, and new construction is all about speed. But this is the most versatile fine finish tip you can use. You can do all kinds of things with it. Great for gutters, great for downspouts, front doors, side doors, all that kind of stuff. Fine finish tip, you gotta have one of those anytime you want that automobile-like finish. Smooth wall, smooth textured walls, level 5, you might get fingering or lap marks because these high production tips, they leave kind of a sharp edge and not a really feathered edge here. In new construction, when I was doing, back in my new construction days, when I did a lot of new construction, day in and day out, when I was spraying walls, it's all about speed and getting things done fast. I would be using a 510 tip for doing all my trim packs. Because up here too, we're 1x4 trim, so the trim is, it's pretty wide. So the baseboards are pretty wide, door jambs, window trim, they're pretty wide, and you want that tip to span that distance so you can shoot it just one time. You don't want to have to do multiple passes on your trim work, and you're going to have a little bit more extra overspray and extra paint. But in new construction, it doesn't matter because there's no flooring, there's nothing in there. It's just a bare house, bare wood, and you're just blowing and going. So here's how I keep my tips organized. This is a tip saver down in mineral spirits or paint thinner. My tips are just kept, inside there. And once you start to get a handful of tips in there, it's really hard to remember what's what and when it was used last, and how many gallons have been put through it. So simplify the process. 310, 515, 619. It's going to get you a whole long ways. So now I'm going to set this thing up. I got it set up, and we're going to show you. I'm going to start spraying right here with the pressure too low, and then we're going to show you as I adjust the pressure what happens to the spray pattern. All right, so I've done some testing right now. I'm just going to roll my paper now, get a fresh sheet of paper right here, and this tip is typically wants to run at higher pressures. It's a high production tip. I have the pressure set at, it's all the way down below the HEA mark, so it's really extremely low. It's at around, it looks like about 700 PSI. And I know somebody's gonna be curious about the lime green gun whip. It makes this section of the hose a lot more flexible. If you just hook the regular hose to the gun, this banding, which is typically on all regular hoses, makes it less flexible, makes it harder to move, get in and out of tight spaces, causes a lot more gun fatigue. And the lime green hose whips are my own custom spec'd out hose whips that's got a ley line on it that says the Idaho Painter right on it, a Paint Life product. So if you want one of our custom hose whips, go check out our store at my website, theidahopainter.com, or store.theidahopainter.com, where you can get our really cool shirts, hats, and a lot of the tools and accessories that I keep in my vehicles. I'm gonna switch this thing over to a Titan HEA tip. I got my bucket of tips right here. If you've never seen one of these things, this is a tip saver right here, this bucket, and these things are pretty amazing. It organizes your tips, keeps them down. I got just about that much paint thinner that my tips sit in so they don't dry out. That's now at about 1500 PSI, and I've got, I think I got 100 feet of hose right here, so it's probably dropping down to about 1000 PSI at the gun, which is typically what an HEA tip should be run at. And so the benefits of that is less overspray, less kickback, and less fallout. So here we go. So I'm getting a fairly good feathered edge right here. It's filling in pretty nicely, but I still think that I want my edge to be a little bit more feathered. And this is, once again, this is a 311 tip. And so these tips are just a little bit harder to dial in. You would typically use something like this to maybe spray some trim or something if you wanted to control overspray. So we're looking, we still got some fingering right there, and we're running at about, let me see if so it was dropping down to the top of the green. I'll bump it up just a little bit more. Now right there, it's looking pretty nice for a 311 tip. Here we go. So now you can start to see that is nice and feathered for a 311 tip. Got a nice feathered edge right here. It's all filled in. And now I'm running, that's gonna be at the pump, it's 2000 PSI, but it's dropping down to around 1500 to 1300 PSI at the gun. Here's a 515 Titan HEA tip. And we'll show you what this one looks like now. We'll see if we can get this one adjusted to, so that's
That's a lot more paint coming out there. So you can see this one, typically the Titan HEA tips like to run around 800 to 1000 PSI, but I had to bump that up to a little bit more than what would be standard, but I finally got the proper spray pattern. I just sprayed this real quick with a 515. It sounded really loud. It sounded like it threw a lot of overspray out here on the edges. So I know my pressure is probably up too high for an HEA tip. I'm gonna drop that down. So now I'm like at the HEA range, which is the top of the green gauge. So let me spray right here. So now look at that nice feathered edge right there. The pressure sounded a little bit low. I can stand to bump it up just to the top of the range right there, and we'll see how that looks. I got a really good feathered edge, no fingering at all. Do it one more time here. Now look at that. See that nice feathered edge right there? And I'm running at the pump, I'm running at 1100 PSI. So now compared to the high production tip, 1100 compared to 2200. So I'm gonna create a lot less fallout, a lot less dust in the air, and yet I have these really, really nice feathered edges. So one where that is gonna really come into play is on a ceiling. Because when I showed you those edges, the fingers that will actually build up paint a lot heavier, that fingering on a ceiling is gonna show really bad. You're gonna see it as striping all over the ceiling. I'll show you one more time. That one compared to right here, nice crisp edge, but we got some fingering, some heavy spots on a ceiling that's gonna show really bad. So this pattern, really nice for a ceiling, and then also on a fence. If I'm spraying a fence on the outside, I can drop it all the way down to 1100 PSI, which is gonna be about 900 at the gun. And I've got a nice spray pattern, low overspray. I don't ever water my paints down because all the paints that I spray are actually designed to spray and not brush and roll specifically. So there you have it, some quick tips on how to get a proper spray pattern. And today we're gonna be talking about painting the trim. We have baseboards in here and we don't have any window trim. We got a couple doors that have door jambs. So it's gonna be very simple, but I'm gonna walk McKenna through the process of painting our own trim, and we're gonna be spraying it. So we gotta start off by masking. We're gonna be using some tools. We've got 9-inch paper, we've got 1-inch tape, but we don't want any paint to bleed onto her nice hardwood floors. So we're gonna be using some blue frog tape. This is frog tape right here, frog tape blue, and it's the same as the green frog tape. It swells on the edges and doesn't allow any paint to bleed underneath of it. This is the blue form, so this is the contractor pack. It comes in a 4-pack. We got the 1-inch tape, and I'm gonna be showing her how to mask down here on the floors. We'll be putting our 1.5-inch tape down, and then we're putting our paper on top of that. So we'll be using a hand masker, and then we're gonna be using duster brushes. We have some old brushes here because we don't want our floors to be dusty because the tape won't stick. So we're gonna sweep the floors with our duster brushes along the edges of the baseboards, run our tape, then run our tape and paper, and then prep the top of it by caulking anything that needs to be prepped or sanded, caulking the tops of the baseboards or spackling anything. So let's get moving on to the project, McKenna. So the first process we want to start with, McKenna, is the dusting. And I want to just walk around and I want to dust the tops of my baseboards and I want to dust the floor along where the masking is going to go. If you don't dust the floor, the masking is not going to stick very well, and then you'll also get paint bleed underneath your masking because you won't get a good adhesion. But the tops of the baseboards, they didn't do a very good job caulking the tops of them, so we're going to dust the tops of the baseboards and re-caulk some of those, and then also dusting the floor. So we're just going to walk around and quickly dust the tops of this stuff, and you can just work right along right there, and you want to dust it really well. And then you can take a shot back and shot back that up, but everything's gonna get all dirty anyways because we're painting. So we'll just work on this dusting process, get it really clean, and then we'll move on to the next step. I'm gonna set up my masker. A hand masker is set up just like this. You put your roll of tape on. The tape comes over the top right here, so you can see how it comes over the top. There's this little pin right here. It has to go underneath the pin. And then your paper is loaded on too. So you got our 9-inch paper. The paper is the same thing. It goes over the top and it just presses right on. So I'll take my tape, stick it on top the paper, just pull that through, and now it's ready to go. And what we do is now we're gonna just take, we don't have to be nearly as precise. We just wanna put our paper right on top of our frog paint right here. So we're just gonna be cruising right along, just putting that paper down. And then to keep it from flipping up from the sprayer, because the force of the sprayer will cause the paper to flip up, we just take tape and we're gonna tack this down in some areas just like this. So now our paper is stuck to the floor, and then we'll put drop cloths over the top of that. All right, McKenna, so we've got everything masked off, but there's one more step to the process. Did you learn anything masking at all?
Well, I learned how to mask.
All right, so you learned how to mask, that's good. So you're doing a great job, but now the baseboards themselves, there's some prep that needs to be done because the original painters that in the new construction process didn't do a very good job. There's a lot of dust and debris that was kicked up on the baseboards when they sprayed the walls. Most of the walls and baseboards are all the same color, painted with the same paint. When they sprayed the walls, they didn't vacuum very good and it kicked up a lot of dirt on the baseboards, so they're very rough. So we're gonna sand the baseboards, and then the tops of them weren't caulked very well, so we're gonna re-caulk them so they have a nice good transition on the top of the baseboards. We're gonna be doing some sanding. We have a sander right here that has a little dust bag on it, so we're not creating a whole lot of dust, but after we're done sanding, we'll just shop vac on the tops of the masking. That way we don't kick any dust up that we created by sanding. But the corners weren't sanded very well, so we're gonna sand them. If you don't have access to a sander, we can just use a sanding block. We use these quite often. This is a medium sanding sponge, so it's a squishy sanding sponge. So we're gonna begin doing the sanding first, because if we caulk first and the caulking's wet, we might mess up our caulking. You got a caulking gun right here. So let me show you how to set up your caulking gun. The caulking gun right here has a little blade in it, right here. If you can see, when I squeeze the trigger, that's what cuts the caulking tube open. And so I'm gonna cut my tube open, and I want it to be cut at a 45-degree angle. And so I'm gonna set my tube in there and cut it at a 45-degree angle. And I just want a little small hole. I don't wanna stick too much of the tube in there. I'm gonna cut it at a 45-degree angle, and you can see that's a small hole. It's ready to go. It does have a thing, some like silicone caulking, you have to perforate the inside of the tube first, but this is latex caulking. You don't have to. I'm gonna set it in there. I want my 45-degree angle facing down, set it in, and it's ready to go to caulk. But we'll do the sanding process first, and then we'll begin caulking. When I caulk, I use a sponge, and you can feel it's wet. The sponge is wet, so when you're wiping your excess caulking off, it'll be on your finger, and then you can just wipe your finger onto your sponge. It keeps your finger wet, and it gets the excess caulking off. But with a wet finger, it smooths the caulking off a lot better. But let's do the sanding. We've got the sander right here, and all you gotta do, just run around and feel if there's any rough stuff, but it's all rough right here. And so I'll just start sanding that. I don't need to have it up very high speed, and just you don't want your sander to hit the tape, because if it hits the tape, it's gonna tear the tape up, and we'll have to retape. So just cruise right along the baseboards and let's get those sanded. I'll show you right here. Here's a corner. Let me show you, McKenna. So this corner right here, you can see how it wasn't cut very well. Let me show you what it looks like. See how and it's not caulked very well. There's a big crack right there. These are sharp corners. We're gonna make that corner look a lot nicer. Now you can see how the corners are nice and rounded and blended in, and that's gonna look so much nicer. Just a little bit of work, 1 minute, and that corner is gonna look like a professional did it. All right, McKenna, so the final step to this process is we're gonna be caulking the tops of the baseboards and anything else that needs to be caulked. I even noticed back here on this fireplace, you can see this 90-degree corner right here, how that does not look very good. We can even caulk something like that. And we're just using a latex caulking. It's a white caulking. Some of the baseboards, the caulking shrunk, and so it's down inside there. It doesn't have a nice smooth transition to the wall. But you're just gonna take and lay out a nice little bead of caulking. And I have a sponge, this is a tile sponge, and I have a rag, and they're both wet. You can use a rag or a tile sponge. I kind of like the tile sponge, but I'm gonna wet my finger. A wet finger always smooths out the caulking a lot better, but I'm gonna lightly put my pad of my finger on the bead, and you can see how it lays it out, and that's gonna look a lot nicer right there on that wall. So there's not a lot of stuff on the walls that needs to be caulked, but mainly the baseboards. So nice, soft bead of caulking. You don't have to press very hard, just very, very lightly. And I can keep smoothing it out till I get it where I want. But the tops of the baseboards down here, let's look at the tops. I'm gonna show you. I always like to keep my caulking gun clean on the end, but if I take the 45-degree angle, and I don't want the 45 facing up because it's gonna squirt the caulking up like that. I want it facing down up against where I want the caulking to lay out. So I'm just gonna squeeze the trigger, just lay out a nice little bead like this. You don't want too much or you're gonna have to wipe it all off. Come right up against there, and then I'm gonna take my sponge, wet my finger, lightly press down so I can just feel the caulking, and you can see that nice bead of caulking that's leaving on there. That's gonna look a lot nicer now once your trim and baseboards are painted. So I'm working this, there's a spot right here I didn't get enough caulking. You can see I didn't fill it in. So I'll put a little bit more down there, and I'll just work it with my wet finger so it looks nice and smooth, just like that.
Hey, if you got any questions or comments about these tips and tricks we're sharing, we're only just a portion of the way through the video, but leave your questions down below. We love to hear what you have to say or your questions. We try to get to all of them. So we want to help you out. We want to help you master spray and trim like a pro. If you want to know anything about the tools and accessories we're using, a lot of the times we put them down in the video description below, links to them, so you get more information about them, or if you need to purchase any tools or accessories. So check the video description at the end of this video. Back to the video.
Windowsill here. Prior to doing windowsills, I always want to take and we use just what we call duster brushes, and they're old paint brushes. You dust it off really good. The windowsill, you want that thing to be extremely smooth. And then we got some doors over here. We're going to want to spray the doors before we do the windowsill.
So here we go, we're gonna be spraying 3 doors right here. And we've got our airless sprayer set up. We really like spray and trim with a 6-inch gun extensions, anywhere from 6 to 10. We've got a FFT 310 tip, and we got 3 doors here, and we're gonna give you the opportunity to see 3 different painters paint them. So I'm gonna spray one, Zach's gonna spray one, and John's gonna spray one. The technique's probably pretty dang similar because we've all learned from each other, or they learned from me, or I've taught them. But you might see a little bit of differences, and I wanted you to see all 3 of us do it because there might be some subtle differences in speed or trigger pull or anything. So watch how we do this. 3 guys doing 3 consecutive doors. Okay, here we go. We're gonna give John the honors first. He's gonna go first, I'm gonna go second, and then Zach's gonna go third. Some of the technique is just, I like to spray the edges first, and then the face of the door. I'm not sure what John does, I'm not sure what Zach does. They're gonna just do what they do. So here we go, let's check this out. John's got the honors, always wearing a respirator. I do like wearing gloves when I'm spraying too, because if I get hands on my paint, hands on my hands. I like it to come off just with my gloves. So here we go. John, let's go. there you have it. 3 guys, 3 burgers and a fries, and 3 doors.
So you do the outside edges like that, and then you're going to do your corner, your 45 right there, your face, without letting go of the trigger, and then you'll come onto the inside, and you don't want to let go of the trigger there. You'll do on this casing that last 45, and then you'll do one probably, 50% faster, come along just that final inside corner, okay? Then your bottom, you'll do, usually what I'll do is, the bottom edge is done, so I'll do the face, and I'll work my way in towards the window, so face, corner, and then I'll come back and forth a couple of times to make sure you stop about an inch, inch and a half away from each edge, because you've already got paint coming down to there, and it'll start building up. And it's the same when you do your turnovers on your corner. You've got to you think fluid, like you're whipping it around the corner, because here you're hanging out here longer than you're hanging out up there, and so that's where you'll start to get your heavy spots if you don't whip it around that corner and keep moving. Make sense?
In this video, we're going to show you how to spray ceilings and walls using an extendable extension pole that you can attach your gun to. We've got a contractor's Graco gun and an extendable extension pole right here that we're going to be using. The gun attaches to this extension pole. This is the part that actually pulls the trigger. This is the part that attaches the gun and tightens the gun. The gun actually just slips inside this mechanism right here, the trigger. It's going to sit right there. We're going to tighten it down, get it right in place exactly where you want the gun. Make sure it's nice and snug. Then on the back side, it has another adjustment that will make the gun go up or down, and you're going to want to determine how you're going to be spraying. If I'm spraying here, I want that gun, I'm going to want it a little bit farther back. Just like that. It's got a trigger down here that pulls. This trigger is what squeezes the trigger of the gun itself. The pole can be extended higher or lower by this mechanism right here. I'm going to get an approximate height I want. Tighten this up. I want to make sure the gun, this trigger, and the gun are facing the same direction. Barry from B&K Painting. This is part 2 of our series on how to use an airless sprayer. In this series, we're going to show you how to spray a door and a window. And the door we got ready, set up here inside of the house. The door's got some white spots on it. If there's any areas that need to be primed, we use a product called Seal Lock Primer, and it's an alcohol-based primer which dries really quick. We primed some spots on the door jambs. There was some crayon marks and some other pin marks on the door. We masked behind the door. We put screwed a stir stick on top of the door that'll keep it away from the wall. So when we flip the door over, it will lean up against the wall from both sides. So the door is ready to spray. We got a Rack X 210 tip inside the gun. The sprayer's all loaded up with the paint. We're going to start off by spraying the 2 edges of the doors and then the face of the door. We're going to flip it over and then spray the opposite side.
This video, we're doing a bonus room right here. We're painting the walls, painting the ceilings, and painting the trim. So I'm going to show you the process that we actually go through when it comes to painting the trim. So we got all the masking finished off in this room. We've came in here, put our drop cloths down. We don't want to get anything on the floors, so we got the whole floor. It's a hardwood floor, got it all covered with drop cloths. Then we ran around frog tape all around the baseboards because we don't want anything leaking onto our hardwood floors. Then we ran 9-inch paper with 1-inch 20/20 tape around that. Masked our windows off with frog tape and plastic. And now we're ready to go. Got the sprayer set up right here, set on drop cloths, so no overspray or any paint will get on anything. We've got a door exiting right here. We're gonna be removing that door, setting it up against one of the walls, and then we're gonna be covering that entry into this room with plastic, so no dust will actually travel out into the rest of the house. Make sure you have respirators. We're shooting the film here, so I'm not wearing a respirator because I gotta talk. But you definitely want to wear a respirator when you're doing any spraying. So John's got his respirator on, ready to go, and here we go. Prior to any of the painting, we got this all masked off, and this is a semi-gloss trim paint on here. It was a latex trim paint, and we went around and checked it really good for any nicks or dings, sanded any nicks or dings,
filled anything with spackle, sanded that with just a 3M sanding sponge, and then we went around with our gloss off because we want to make sure that we got a good surface that our paint's going to bite and bond to really well. And so we always use a liquid deglosser. Right here we just used a crud cutter liquid deglosser. We typically have several different options to use. We use an M1 deglosser also, but just make sure you use a deglosser, or you're going to sand all your trim to make sure it's going to get a good bite and you have a rough enough surface. You've got our airless sprayer sitting right here, all set up, ready to go. Got our gun. We typically use just a 6-inch gun extension when we're spraying interior trim, and we typically use a Rack X Fine Finish 310 tip, and I like a Graco 2-finger gun, so here's our standard setup right here with our airless sprayer setup right here, and we typically run it at full pressure, so here we go. Generally spraying one side of that door, the other side's masked off, so we don't need to flip the door over.
Hi, you reached Brooke. Oh gosh.
So now we got this door sprayed. We're gonna begin over here spraying, working our way from top to bottom. So we're gonna spray this window, we're gonna spray the bookshelves, and once we get all the windows done, we'll work our way down and then spray the baseboard trim. Okay, we're getting ready to spray this window. We got it caulked with frog tape. We typically like to take clear caulking and caulk around the tape to make sure there's no bleeding through that gets onto the vinyl windows. The frog tape's used pretty good, and but we like to actually just use caulking also, and a lot of times there's a separation between the vinyl and the wood where it cracks, and the caulking process will fill that. So you get your tape seal and that crack filled all in one. Then we'll spray the window. While the window trim is still wet, we'll peel off that masking. Now while this is still wet, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this masking very carefully. And if you don't remove the masking now, once it dries, you could get it bridged from your plastic to your window, and it could end up peeling the paint off. So yeah, you got to be careful not to knock any debris off onto the window, but this is the process and how we like to do it, and it's what's worked best for us over time. Can we use that window?
Yeah, I have that photo.
Just moving right along here, got 2 windows sprayed, working on these other windows. They're gonna begin working on the bookshelves and then the baseboards. We are using a product from Sherwin-Williams. It's called Solo, and it's a semi-gloss interior trim paint, and it hangs really well and dries really fast, has a nice sheen, and it's what we like to spray the trim with the best. We're continuing right along here spraying, getting a little dusty and humid in here so you can't see as well. So we're gonna end this video.
Today we're going to be spraying your trim. We've already gone through the prepping process. We've sanded it, we've done some caulking, we've got it all masked, ready to go. I'm going to show you how to use an airless sprayer, and then we're going to be spraying the trim. We're going to be spraying it with a 310 fine finish tip, and the reason why we spray it is we don't want to leave brush strokes or roping all over it. We want it to look like an automobile finish, so we're going to spray it. That's what we typically do. So let's get on with the spraying process. We're going to move down here, and I'm going to show you how to load up a Titan 440 impact sprayer, and then I'm going to teach you how to spray the trim. Hopefully everything goes well and we have some pretty looking trim. All right, so here we are, McKenna. We've got our sprayer. This is a Titan 440 impact airless sprayer. This is a small airless sprayer. It's actually not the exact one, but this is the type of sprayer I started off my painting company with 18 years ago. This sprayer, we've got a hose, airless spray gun right here. We are going to be spraying our finish with a 310 fine finish tip. The airless sprayer has two hoses that come out of it. One of them, this is a prime hose. This is what purges all the air out of an airless sprayer, because it is what it says it is, it's airless. The only thing that comes out of the hose right here is paint. It's not mixed with air at all. It's an airless sprayer. This will prime and purge everything, all the air out of the system. This is the intake tube right here. This is what goes into our paint. This is gonna suck the paint up, take it into the airless sprayer, send it out to the hose, and we'll be able to spray our paint with it. So the first thing we do, I got some clean water in here. I'm just gonna turn this thing on. I'm gonna run some clean water through it first because it has antifreeze in it, and then we'll go from there. It has an on-off button right here, and then it has a pressure button right here. This is gonna adjust the pressure. So I can turn it on, and you can see it's gonna start sucking paint up through the intake tube and sending it out the prime tube. So now I got just water. So the orange stuff was antifreeze. That was what was in there. So now this thing is ready to go. It's just got water in it. I can take this and drop this right into my paint. I have my gallon of paint sitting in there, and I have it in a 5-gallon bucket so it won't easily spill over. We have everything set up in an outpack paint station, and that way if any oil leaks out of the sprayer or if any paint spills, it's going to be contained in our secondary containment. It's not going to get on the floor. We have drop cloths down. 2 is even protection on top of that. So the first thing you do is you're going to put your intake tube down right into your paint, and I want to make sure my paint is stirred up right here, and it is stirred up. This is just white trim paint right here. So now that is our intake tube. That's going to suck up paint right here. You're just going to turn your on and off button off right here, and I'm going to turn it on. I want my pressure just not all the way full. I'm going to turn it all the way down to off, and then just turn it up just a little bit. Turn it on. It'll start priming. As soon as paint starts to come out, I've got one thing to tell you. It's on prime right here. This is our prime switch right here, right here in the horizontal position right here. That is spray. That will allow the the sprayer to turn it to spray out the gun. So now I got my gun all set up. I always like using extension so I don't have to bend over or reach. So I typically have like a 6-inch to 10-inch gun extension on there. Got my 310 tip, it's all set up. My pressure looks pretty good right there. We're gonna begin spraying. We wanna lay out our drop cloths, make sure our drop cloths are all around where we're gonna be spraying, and then we'll start spraying. So let's set up those drop cloths. One final check to make sure we're not gonna get any overspray on the floor or anything. We wanna make sure we have our respirators and our eyewear, protective eyewear on, and then we'll get going. I took the extension off because it was, I got it set up and it was spitting pretty bad, and for a first time use, I don't want you to have to deal with spit, so I eliminated the extension because it won't spit with an extension. We've got a Titan Fine Finish 3-tip tip on there. We're running a Titan RX Pro gun. This house is very nice because this house doesn't have trim around all the windows, nor does it have any trim around the door jambs except the 2 entries. So we only got to spray 2 door jambs. I'll do short sections and runs. I'm gonna spray the top of the baseboards and then I'm gonna spray the face of the baseboard. So I'll spray the top, but I do wanna put my mask on. So I'll put mask, eyewear, and you're all set up with your goggles. So safety first. So here we go. Just like that. So you can see what I did, and want to have a nice, smooth, consistent speed. And I started right there, so I want to just over the top, 2 times on the face, just like that. I shoot it again, hit the top, 2 times on the face, just like that. Look at it, see how it looks? A little bit light right there. I want you to give it a try. First time, McKenna.
Really?
Oh yeah. Move your hand, then pull the trigger.
Isn't it a little risky doing by the fireplace?
No.
Oh.
Okay, go again. There you go. There you go. Okay, not bad. So, yeah, let me work with you here around the fireplace. Let me get this right here. Keep about. So what you want to do, that's not bad. So you want to stay about 12 inches away from the surface. Let me get it. So we'll move over here. I'll have you spray right over here. Yep. Do some more.
Oh, shoot. Oh, that was out of control.
Not bad. Gonna spray. I'm just ready to flow back and forth. All right, McKenna, we've got all your trim sprayed in your kitchen, and now we're just gonna continue working down the halls. What
Well,
do you
how
think?
does it look?
It
Did
lo-
I do good?
You did good. I
Do
haven't
you
seen
think a woman as old as me is capable of doing this?
you're
By
perfect-
themselves?
By your, you know, all you gotta do, there's a guy on YouTube, he has a bunch of videos, I think over 1,000 videos. He'll teach you every step you need to know on
Oh,
painting.
who is that?
It's like Paint Life TV. There's,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
there's a guy out there.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, just look it up, and you might learn, you know, some tips and tricks
okay.
on painting. But it looks great. Trim's white. We'll look at it after it dries, and if it needs a second coat, we'll spray a second coat. It looks like it covered in 1 coat, and then we're gonna be doing the walls pretty soon. So we don't need to pull up the masking, so we'll just leave the masking, leave the drop cloths, and we'll start rolling the walls. So we got a really cool project today, and I'm with Journeyman John once again, and we've got some trim right here, and this is a stained and lacquered trim, and it's kind of a, I don't know, like a lighter colored, I don't know how you would describe it.
Like a golden oakish.
Golden oakish,
Deeper than that.
yeah, something like that. And so the customer didn't want to paint this trim. It's kind of a whole lot of work to paint it because it wasn't paint grade, but they wanted it to be what they described as a dark ebony color, or not ebony,
Like
but
espresso.
espresso color. And they wanted it, but then they didn't want it to be opaque. Didn't want it to have that painted look to it. So what did we do? We came up with what we call
Toner.
lacquer toners. And if you've never heard of that, well, it's
kind of simple. It's just stain and lacquer. And what we did is I took down a piece of this sample, this trim, took it down to our local cabinet shop that makes up all our pigmented lacquers, and asked them to mix us up a toner that would give me kind of an espresso color. And so they took a sample of this and they started adding toner in it and spraying it on there until they achieved the look that I wanted. And then we said, yeah, so here we are doing this. And how's the process go, John?
It's pretty simple. You make sure your trim is clean. Use you can use glosser or you can use denatured alcohol, something like that. Probably not a good idea, especially on an older home, to sand it, because if there are any contaminants, you're just going to move that around, heat it up, and push it into the lacquer more, and kind of spread your problem around. Beyond that, it's pretty simple. It's kind of touch and go. You feel it out, and you know, once you put it on, it's not like you can take it off. So you want to start probably on lighter coats and then build up to that look you want and that opacity that you want.
Yeah, every lacquer toner job you work on is going to have its own characteristics and look a little bit different. And so I started on one side of this project here and just went into one window and just started working with one window and trying to achieve the look that I wanted. And you just want to start off putting a little bit and just start building up from there. If you get it too heavy, you can never go back, really. So you can always go darker, but you can't go lighter. And that's one of the characteristics with lacquer toners is we can't make this look any lighter, but we can make it look darker, and we can do a lot of different things with it. And we did run into a problem. When I started working, started spraying some of the door jambs and doors, we ran into a major fisheye problem. And so we kind of had to just work with that. And the fisheye and the lacquer toner looks really good if you spray it on, and if you leave it. But then with the fisheye problems, we had to kind of improvise and do something different. And John's, I developed the technique of just taking a brush, and we're just using a chip brush and brushing over the whole door jamb that has the fisheye and kind of giving it, what would you call, like an antique look?
Yeah, it almost looks like glaze, except now we don't have to go through the process again of putting a lacquer over the top of that glaze.
Yeah, so you kind of just have to just deal with the situation as it goes. And then I did the one door jamb, called the customer in, said, is this going to be acceptable to you? If not, we're going to have to do something else. The customer really liked it. And so we just continued going on with where we were. We're going to be showing you in this video some video footage of us using the toners and how we're going about using it and spraying it and leaving it and just spraying it and then back brushing it. But the fisheye problem, John, you were spraying with one of the doors and you kind of noticed something and had a question. And
yeah, you know, start to spray one of these doors in the fisheye, you could see it in kind of a swooping pattern. And typically when you see that contaminant, you'll see it in a couple of places specifically. But the swoosh was a little unusual. Swish, swoosh,
white mark,
swirl, white mark. And so we came to find out that in the recent past, it had just had lemon oil applied all over the place.
Yeah, and I think John even asked me, I think it looks like somebody's wiped these things down with lemon oil. I went and contacted the customer who's prepping this place to get it ready to be painted and all the trim being painted and stuff. And I asked them what cleaners they were using to clean and get ready, and they said lemon oil. And lemon oil is one of the worst things you can ever put on your wood trim. If you're ever thinking about re-clear coating it or ever thinking about painting it, you never want to put any type of lemon oil on it. And I just recommend to the customer just, for the rest of the project, just to clean it with warm soap and water, or you can use Dawn. So I think that's your best bet to getting something ready to lacquer. You don't want to use any type of chemicals because you could possibly run into fisheye problems. So here we go. We're going to continue on. We've been working on this project now since yesterday, and I'm going to walk you through, show you some of the stuff we've already done, what it looks like. And do keep in mind, we ran into a lot of issues with fisheye. We worked with the customer trying to achieve different looks with the stain and the lacquer toner, and they like the look. And this is what we're continuing to do. So here we go. Check it out. So there you have it. Video's all done. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully you are going to spray trim like a professional. It is going to take a lot of practice. It isn't easy. It's like cutting in a line. Once you got some of these tips and tricks, it's just time behind the gun, having that gun in your hand and spraying. You know, if you've enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave it down in the questions or comments section below. We love to hear what you have to say. We love to hear your tips and tricks. But if you've got questions for us, leave them down. We try to look at every single one. We try to answer them. Sometimes it takes a whole long time to get to them, but we try our best we can. So leave it down in the comment section below. And like we always say, we'll see you on our next video. Out.